Off the top of your head, do you know when the church was founded? It is one of, I was led to believe it is one of the oldest buildings in central Castries.
Okay, the Anglican Church in St. Lucia as an institution dates way back to the 1800s. The Anglican Church in Castries, the Holy Trinity Anglican Church, was officially commissioned in 1894. But prior to that, you had other churches, for instance. The Anglican Church in Christ the King in Soufrière was built in 1845, River Doris was built the following in 1846, and the St. Paul's was built in 1891.
It is the oldest building in Castries. It was built by the military when they had their church first. The first church they had was down in River Doris by the hotel, which the ruins are still there. But they had, when they come to Castries, the whole of Castries, the entire Castries was a swamp, even including the botanical garden. That was a swamp. And when they reclaimed what they call them Carenage, when they reclaimed that area, the gardens, the only solid place for what we would call the only cahier, anything cahier, was from by the bridge where Delhi Supermarket now stands and the Anglican Infant School now stands, and above it is the Anglican Church. All that here was solid ground which they had to excavate, and they went and they built the Anglican Church up on the hill for the soldiers and for the community at that time, because the soldiers were very important, and that part of the religion, the English particularly, were very prominent.
It took a long time to build, and it was financed a lot by, like most of the other churches, by the owners of the sugar plantations. And at that time, most churches in St. Lucia, especially Anglican churches, were financed by the elites, who were the churchgoers. I mean, it was a bit different from the Catholic Church, which has a more popular base of financing of the churches. But predominantly, most churches were built with donations of land and cash from its congregation.
You mentioned that a lot of the congregation members would have been the elites, as well as before St. Lucia had a governor general or any ministry, would have had administrators sent down from the England, as we were still a colony. And a lot of those administrators would have been Anglican because coming from England. So
right.
could you just get into that a bit?
Yes. And in fact, there were one or two governor generals who were, Frederick Clark himself, who was the first governor general of St. Lucia, was Anglican. So you had, as you said, a number of administrators who came from the UK. The Church of England was essentially the establishment church in most of these colonies which were colonized by the UK. But as the French expanded their influence in most of these islands, the Catholic religion pervaded, and it became more widespread in terms of its numbers. And most of the functionaries who were in senior positions were Catholic, and they sort of diminished the role and importance of the Anglican Church within the society. But for quite a while during the immediate post-colonial period, the administration of the colony were Anglicans, and they worshipped at the Anglican churches because most of them primarily were from the UK.
With it being the oldest building in Castries and one of the oldest religions in St. Lucia, Thanksgiving that we celebrate on the first Monday of October is the only religious holiday that is not based around the Roman Catholic Church in St. Lucia that we celebrate as a bank holiday. Do you mind getting into that?
I see what I can do there. Of course, the priest would have, or member of the parish church council, one of the older members, although most of them I know have passed on. But what I do recall is the harvest Thanksgiving was always a very big thing for not only Anglicans, you might be surprised to know. A lot of people look forward to contributing whatever it is, because the idea of Thanksgiving is we're supposed to give God back all the time, but at Thanksgiving, harvest we call it, we give more than usual. We believe that the community, whether you be an Anglican also, you give back part of your produce. The Bible talks about first fruit, and anybody reading the Bible would know that, first fruit. So it was something like that. And you'd be surprised to know that there are people who are not Anglicans, but who are always aware of that custom, and they would come to you and say, well, teacher, when is your harvest? What can I give? I have some bread. I'm a baker. I would like to donate some bread which you all can use on harvest morning for a little hot dog and coffee sale. I remember one lady who sews, she gave me 2 dozen scarves, and she said, hey, you can use it for your harvest bazaar to sell, and so on. So people outside of the church do appreciate it and still contribute. However, going back to your question, if I can recall, I'm not very young as anyone can see, if I can recall, the most of our head teachers, our governors at the time, I think they were governors before, I'm a bit thing on my history, they're now at the moment, but our administrators were English people. They were Anglicans. And so this is where I think the policy started there. As I said, you may have to have a little chat with one of the older members of the church, who I'm sure we will give you that information. But since they were Anglicans, I guess, and they were more or less in charge of the country, so to speak, this came from them. So every year in the first Monday of October, it is a public holiday where it is supposed to be used in Thanksgiving.
Had a very stern and staunch priest. We called him Canon Laurie. He was by far a religious general who protected the Anglicans and also the church. And whenever you see him, we all knew that this also. He also taught us something about animals. He had his famous dog, Toby, and Toby would listen. And if you come to the rectory and Toby bark, he would come out. If not, you're in trouble. And he would teach us, guide us, and protect us. Well, my godmother taught us, she made sure that I sang in the choir. And at school, when we sing in our hymns, I would try to project my voice so it could be heard. And we had some very, very staunch Anglicans. And the Anglican community was so strong that the history came out.
As I do respond to what you have asked, I will now and again refer to the Anglican school because the two went together. As a child, I actually went to school in 1952. In those days, the school year started in January, an old English system. I was just 4 years old. And I must say, all our teachers were Anglicans. So going to church, that's why I said earlier, I cannot separate one without the other two, without the other one. Anglican church, Anglican school. And I must say, the church played a considerable part in the education of the students then. Most of our ethics, moral behavior came from the teachers who themselves were devout Anglicans. I recall us using the very hymns in passages to do our language arts, whether it was creative writing or what have you. We learned a lot of moral verses. Actually, every week we had a thought for the week to ponder over, which in essence was a very, very good practice, which in my teaching career, I think I took that practice in every school that I went. You see, by the thought for the week, you were able to inculcate Christian attributes, moral behavior, and such into the classroom wherever you went. At the Anglican Church, we did have to go from the school to the church a few times a week to ensure that you were well instructed in what you had to do.
Earlier you mentioned that the administrators would have been our then equivalent of some semblance of a government, with them being persons coming directly to oversee plantations, being mostly Anglican and the elites of society. How did that translate into the church community?
You're picking on a little sore point there today, but I'll try to answer as honestly as I can. Well, we all know it isn't only the Anglican Church. It has been something we are all aware of, this social, let's put it like that, I don't want to get into trouble. We've had this social barrier all along, and whether we like it or not, although we are breaking off from it quite a bit, it is still there, even if in a subtle way. So I want to make that point very clear. In my church, there was still a little barrier, because when I grew up, there were certain benches in the church I could not sit in. And the benches had marked pews. Certain people paid for their seat. So we were allowed to use the small side benches, and maybe the last 6 or 7 benches on either side of my church, as a Holy Trinity Church in Castries. And by the way, Holy Trinity Church Parish includes the Anglican Church St. Mary's the Virgin at Lacaille in the quarter of Dennery. And so back to Holy Trinity in Castries, upstairs was also used for everybody. Well, further down, I remember one of our priests was very adamant and did his best to cut off that stigma, if you want to call it that the church should be open to everybody and you would sit where you choose to. The only seat that was left still marked was one for somebody representing the state or whatever. And even if somebody did sit there by error, we wouldn't ask them to get up. We just knew most of us didn't sit there. Most of us, out of habit, people to sit more to the back. But let me say clearly, we do not have seats marked anymore. That was done with many years ago. Good morning. Thank you, sir. I am Elizabeth Worrell Setange, a recipient of the St. Lucia Medal of Honor, Silver, for 2022, for my extensive services in the field of education. I am an Anglican, and to begin with, my teaching career actually started at the Anglican primary school at the tender age of 13. However, while I spent considerable time at other schools, in my last 3 years, I returned to support my alma mater as a principal of the Castries Anglican Infant School before I retired.
My name is Emma Charles, and I am the chair of the Monsignor Patrick Anthony Folk Research Center, involved in research on St. Lucian history and culture.
That's Kenny Anthony's great-great-great-grandfather on Riverdori. Because they had all the land in Bush, Ballon Bush.